Hey guys! Today I wanted to share with you my birth story. When I was pregnant, I really enjoyed watching other people's birth stories, especially if they were positive birth stories. And I will just start by saying this was my best birth yet. I left this birth feeling so empowered and inspired and just really blessed and happy, which feels really amazing because I will admit that I definitely battled fear during this pregnancy leading up to labor and delivery because the memories from my last daughter, who was a really fast and intense birth, still were very fresh in my mind. I still really remembered how intense it was and kind of how scary it was. It got so intense so fast that it was pretty hard to handle. So if you watched my last video, you know that this little baby girl had us waiting. I was really hoping to go before or right after my due date, but she kept us waiting for 6 days. And it is so funny because in that last video, I ended with a little talking that I did after my 3rd acupuncture, where I had really just come to a place of peace about waiting for her to come on her own time and really trying to let all of the anxiety and worry and future tripping go and just let it be what it was going to be. And right after that, which this might be a little TMI for some of you, but I started having a bloody show. And so really labor must have started at that point, even though I wasn't really having any feelable or painful contractions. And when I first had that bloody show, I had a little surge of fear because I was scared about going through labor and what it was going to be like and how long it would last. But I just had my husband pray with me, and then we went on about the rest of our evening. It was around 7 o'clock then, and I was just sure that that meant that labor was going to start really soon, even though I know that bloody show only indicates that something's happening, but it doesn't indicate that it's going to happen immediately. But I went to bed and nothing happened. So we went and took the girls out for breakfast, and then we took them to story time at the library. At this point it was like noon and I still wasn't having any painful contractions, so I started to doubt again if anything was ever going to happen. From story time, we were gonna go take a walk to try and hurry things along. At that point, my 3-year-old was ready for a nap and I was ready to take a rest too, so we decided to just go home, and I'm really glad that we did because I was able to take about a 20-minute nap and then listen to part of a podcast that was talking about natural pain management, which was fascinating, and I will link that podcast below because I found it really interesting. Then my husband came in to talk to me about a family issue with scheduling when grandparents would come in after the baby was born, and I had what felt like a real contraction while he was talking to me. And then I started crying about it, and I should have known then that labor was right around the corner, but after that one contraction, nothing else happened. So I just had him come and cuddle with me and hold me to help me relax and just chill out. And then when we were laying in bed, I felt an internal pop. It was a really weird sensation. It felt like a balloon popping inside of me. And so then I sat up and I had a gush of water, and I knew that my water had broke. I went ahead and called the midwife that was on call to tell her that even though I wasn't having painful contractions, they had started to get more regular. I could feel the contractions happening more regularly, and my water had broke. And since my last daughter had been born only an hour after my water broke, I wanted to go ahead and head that way. And then I went out and filmed a little clip for YouTube, which just goes to show you that nothing intense was happening yet. But I definitely could start to feel that the contractions were starting to become more regular. They were still super manageable, and I wouldn't call them painful. It was really funny because I was in this place of knowing that labor was starting, but it wasn't overtaking me, and I was really relaxed still. But every time that a contraction came, I noticed that I started to want to be able to pay attention to it. And I know this because my daughter kept trying to talk to me, and I was able to talk to her, but I noticed that I actually handle the contraction a lot better if I could not talk to her and just go internal to really visualize what I had worked on. And my daughters noticed this right away, and they totally took advantage of this because they were getting peanut butter cups out of my stash in my room, and they were waiting until I had a contraction to ask if they could have another one. Because they knew I was going to say, I don't care, do whatever you want. Mommy has to focus. So we headed out on the road, and at first I was going to do a little bit more filming and then try to finish that pain management podcast that I had been listening to. But I very quickly realized that the contractions were getting a lot more intense, and I really wanted to listen to my music from my labor playlist. That's why when you watch the birth footage that I have, there's no footage of the car ride, because I had my headphones in and I was in the middle row of our van just listening to my music, singing along with it. I kept imagining that the contractions were just my body hugging my baby, and that it was like a really good pain, if that makes sense. Like when you get a massage and they really get into an area and it hurts, but it feels really good at the same time. I just kept telling myself that nothing was wrong here and that this was exactly what was supposed to be happening. This wasn't a pain from an injury, but this was my body working really hard to bring my baby out, and that actually helped a lot, and the music helped a lot. The car ride was a little bit crazy because I could tell that my husband was worried about making it on time, and we did get stuck in some traffic. And then when you get off of the highway to go to the birthing center, there's lots of like construction and bumps and stops, and so that part was difficult. But I did keep opening my eyes occasionally and just looking out and creating little mini internal snapshots of what was going on, and just I kept reminding myself that, oh my gosh, like I'm going to meet my baby. It's so crazy. And I kept looking at people in the other cars and wondering, you know, like, do they have any idea what's going on? Of course they don't. They have no idea what's going on. But for me, this is so huge. This is such a big event in my life. But at the same time, it's just part of life. You know, we're in the middle of life and everybody's doing life, but this huge thing is happening for us. And it was just really exciting and fun. At this point in the car, the contractions were coming probably about every 4 minutes and lasting for a minute long. The car ride thankfully only took about 37 minutes or so, but right near the end it was getting to the point where I really did not want to be in the car anymore. I wanted to be able to get out and to move around and not be bumping up and down the road. We got there, I had a contraction in the parking lot, and then we went inside and I immediately changed out of my clothes and changed into what I had brought for the birth. Pretty quickly, I would say almost immediately after we got to the birthing center, things got increasingly intense, and so I started to get really scared because I felt like I couldn't remember what to do to relax. So in between the contractions, I was starting to panic a little bit and be like, I feel like I can't remember how to relax. I feel like I can't remember what I'm supposed to do. But I just kept walking back and forth, bouncing on the birthing ball. I took a little time to use my essential oils that I brought. I just kept trying to internally tell myself that my body was doing exactly what it was supposed to be doing. I actually really helped me to think about what the baby was going through, and so I kept telling my husband to remind me about the baby. I had listened to another podcast during this pregnancy that was specifically about the baby's experience of labor and delivery, which I found really fascinating, and I'll link that one below as well. So I kept thinking about what it was like for the baby and trying to talk to her and tell her how excited I was to meet her and how we were going to do this together. And that might seem really silly, but it was amazing and very helpful for me. So yeah, things had definitely intensified, and they had intensified pretty quickly. Thus, my panicking about how to relax and how to handle these contractions. My midwife, the midwife that I had originally started care with, came, and she came an hour early, which is so good, because if she had came when she originally said that she was going to be able to, she would have completely missed the birth. And I am so grateful to have had her. She was so comforting and reassuring to have that person that I started my care with. She has a really calm spirit and a lot of experience. So she came in at one of those times when I was panicking, and she just talked me through it. She asked what I was worried that I wouldn't remember, what I was scared about, and I said that I was scared because it was so intense and I knew that it was only going to get more intense, and I was worried about how long it would be because I still felt like it was going to be a long time and get a lot more intense. Of course, if anyone had come in and told me that I was going to have the baby in about 20 minutes, 15-20 minutes, then I wouldn't have been so scared. But you have no idea when you're in labor. And in this pregnancy, I had decided that I didn't want to get any cervical checks for multiple reasons. But without having any information, even though I don't really think cervical checks tell you how far along you are, I just assumed that I had a lot longer to go. So I told her that I was scared about how much more intense it was going to be and if I could handle it. And she told me that it was good to be scared because it showed that I was smart, and yes, it was going to get more intense, but the only way out was through, which is something that I had just said in that last vlog, and I knew that to be true. But she told me that I could do it, and her presence and her words really helped me to calm and refocus on all of the visualization and the positive thinking that I was working on. So I remember they had suggested that I get in the water a couple of times at this point. The tub was already filled by the time I got there, but I didn't want to get in the water because I thought I had so much longer to go that I was worried that if I get in the water it would slow things down. But finally they were like, I think you should get in the water now. And so I did get in the water, and that's about when I decided that I needed the music directly in my ears. So I had my labor playlist on my phone, and I really wanted to get footage of this labor and delivery because I've never taken any video of my other two, and I always kind of wish that I had taken video so I could have watched the births of my last two kids. However, when we got to the birthing center, we realized that it was either take footage of the birth with my camera or listen to my playlist. And so at first I had him take some footage, which I will post later, but then it got to a point where I just wanted the music in my ears and not playing on the computer because I wanted to not hear anything else. I got in the water, and there was this one really relaxing minute of the water hitting me, and I had one headphone out, and we were joking about how my kids were taking advantage of my contractions to eat peanut butter cups, and how my calves were so sore from walking all of those stairs. And it really just felt like a normal moment. Like I didn't feel out of it at all. I was able to laugh, and it was just like the three of us were sitting around joking. And then I could feel another contraction coming, so I put my music back in, and on that contraction, that first contraction I had in the birthing tub, I felt the baby's body move down. It was a really interesting feeling, and I reached up inside of myself. It was just an instinctive thing that I did, that I've never done anything like that before, and I felt the baby's head. And so I told the midwife, I think I feel the baby's head. And she asked if it was really close or if it was still far away. And I said that I felt like it was still kind of far away. And at that point, I started to get really hot, and I asked for a cool washcloth that they put over my forehead, and I asked for somebody to be pushing on my back because I was starting to really feel it in my back. My arms started shaking, and so I decided to move to face the back of the tub. So I had been facing the side, and I moved to face the back so that I could hold on to the tub and not have my arms on the floor of the tub anymore. And from that next moment after I moved, I had another huge contraction that was definitely a pushing contraction, and it was very, very intense. I couldn't believe that I was already pushing, and it was so intense that I thought maybe her head had already come out. So I reached down, but it was not out. It was just right at the base there. So for a minute I felt a little bit of disappointment that that hard part wasn't over yet, and I heard the midwife tell me to just hold her there. She told me that she knew that I wanted to push, but to resist the urge to push and just hold her there so that I could stretch around her. And that was really difficult. But again, the music was so helpful. And then on the next contraction, I pushed her head out, and that was really, really intense. I remember with my second daughter that I screamed when she was coming out, and it was like a high-pitched scream because she really like flew out. It was so surprising. And in this pregnancy, I had listened to a podcast that had talked about making really deep noises and almost roaring your baby out, I think was the name of the podcast. And so I tried that when I was pushing out her head. I tried to do a really, really deep roar, and it was amazing. It helped so much. In that same contraction, one more push and her whole body came out, and I grabbed her and pulled her up. And that was amazing because I had listened to yet another podcast. Maybe you're seeing a theme here. I listened to a lot of podcasts. But I listened to another podcast that had talked about bringing your baby up yourself. And when I listened to that podcast, I remember thinking, oh man, that's a nice idea. Like, I like the idea of, catching the baby yourself and bringing them up yourself. But I don't think that's realistic for me because on my other two deliveries, right when I was pushing, I was so focused on pushing that I wasn't even really thinking about the baby. So I didn't think that I would ever be of mind enough to grab the baby and bring them up when I was pushing them out. But in this delivery, I was still so present, and also I felt so connected to the baby and so thinking about the baby the whole time that just when she came out, I just immediately, I didn't even think about it. I just reached down and pulled her up to my chest, and it was such an amazing moment. I was just in shock and amazed that it had happened, that it was over, that I had the baby. And if you watch any of the footage that my husband got, which isn't great footage because the lighting's not good and it's really shaky, but if you just see the emotion there and the pure shock and joy is really, really cool. And I'm really glad that we were able to capture some of that on camera because I really could not believe that that had happened. Now I had this baby in my arms, and this whole pregnancy has been such a weird journey because it was such a shock for me to be pregnant at all. And I feel like the whole pregnancy I just was in constant disbelief that this was happening, that we were having another baby, that I was pregnant, that that there was really a child growing inside of me that's going to come out. It was all just seemed really surreal. And then I would say the birth was an extension of that, where when I saw the baby, I just couldn't believe that I had really had a baby and that she was here, and it was just so awesome. She was born like 2 hours and 20 minutes after my water broke, and I really only had about maybe an hour of intense contractions, which is really fast. It was a lot faster than I was expecting it to go. But it was a really great experience, and now we have this amazing, lovely little person. Yeah. Say hello. Say I'm here. I'm finally here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.